rand has hit its strongest level in almost a year, a bit earlier in the day, trading just below 18 rand. Director and Chief Economist of Econometrix, Dr. Azar Jammine, joins us to unpack the rand's performance. Dr. Jammine, good afternoon and thank you very much for your time. Can we attribute the rand's performance to the political developments in the country, namely the GNU and then the inauguration today?
Most definitely one can attribute the performance of the rand to the GNU. I don't know that what President Ramaphosa said necessarily added all that much to the essence of the fact that he has succeeded in assembling a GNU, and a GNU that incorporates political parties that are committed to the Constitution and democratic principles, but above all, they are parties that are also very amenable to more private sector involvement in the economy to try and address the structural impediments in it, and in so doing enhance economic growth. And I believe that is the essence of why the markets have reacted so favorably. They see South Africa's economic policies and trajectory moving more towards greater private sector involvement, and therefore, in typical neoliberal fashion, projecting that economic growth could actually benefit in the medium to longer term as a consequence. And that's why they've been buying the rand.
Okay. So for those who would say perhaps the markets just like continuity or consistency, that's why we're seeing a greater performance, you're saying it's because deliberately they're of the view that under this GNU, we're going to see policy that shifts more in the favor of the private sector, not necessarily the continuation.
That is correct, more than that. And they basically see the formation of the GNU as facilitating the adoption of measures that will start enhancing economic growth and attacking many of these structural impediments to the economy. We have already seen in recent months the benefits of greater private sector involvement in the economy in the form of the improvement in electricity supply and logistical bottlenecks that has arisen out of the alliance or collaboration between private sector business leaders and the presidency. And the markets are obviously suggesting that this will build still further momentum going forward and reverse the long-term decline of the South African economy as a consequence.
But what of those who believe, Doctor, that a GNU could probably lead to greater volatility here? Because really what we saw last week was more of the signing of the statement of intent, but the real work where we could see some serious contestation is around the policy formulation, the conversations that must take place now around cabinet composition, for instance. These are the real conversations that could probably see many of them start fighting. We don't know if it could be the unraveling of this very GNU.
One gets the sense that, in contrast, the very fact that these parties came together to form a GNU suggests that there is a certain amount of goodwill to try and work together for the future of the country rather than necessarily for their own benefits. The leaders of these parties have been unashamedly admitting that they go into this GNU at high risk to themselves, but are prepared to do this mainly because they believe it's going to benefit the country at large. And that is forestalls a situation in which when there is contestation amongst these parties around certain microeconomic principles, there will tend to be a greater willingness than in the past to compromise and reach a consensus agreement rather than actually try and dominate a particular argument. You might say that that is conducive towards a stalemate, but on the contrary, I think what one will start seeing is more constructive work towards actually addressing the principal impediments to economic growth, which are high levels of unemployment, high levels of poverty and inequality in the country, and a greater willingness to try and move together on this. And remember this, that the underlying principle guiding the participants in this GNU is the sanctity of the Constitution and the adherence to democratic principles, which contrast with some of the stances adopted by some of the opposition parties, most notably the MK and EFF.
Now, it seems a number of financial market analysts share your views, and they've been rapidly updating their RAND forecast. ABSA, in particular, now says it sees the RAND possibly ending 2024 at around 17 Rand 50. Are you perhaps somebody of the same persuasion that it's a possibility that would go as far as 17 Rand 50?
The Rand has been extremely undervalued for a number of years now, and part of that has been due to the uncertainty surrounding what the general election will bring and the fear that we would end up with a government comprised of the ANC and EFF and then when MK was formed, MK as well, and that would usher in the abandonment of fiscal austerity, going for broke as far as government spending goes, spending money that the government doesn't have on the national health insurance, on basic income grant, on expropriation without compensation, on nationalizing companies and the Reserve Bank. And that is one of the reasons why the Rand had weakened so much. Now that a lot of those fears are being appeased, the currency is finding renewed strength. And 1750 is not a huge distance from where it is right now. It means a gain of another 2-3%, which is quite feasible. And you've got to bear in mind that in relation to where the Rand has been trading for the last 30 years in terms of purchasing power, this currency's on average should have been at around 15.5, 16 Rand to the dollar right now. So to go from 18 to 17.5 is just a small benefit in relation, and it would still be cheap even at 17.5, but on the basis of earlier record. But people deep down, I suppose, are still hesitant to take the currency up too far because they fear that, there's still quite a lot of uncertainty regarding what the cabinet will look like and what kind of actions the likes of MK and EFF will take, and could they be very disruptive and that sort of thing.
Doctor, we can only hope that it continues to strengthen. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. That's Director and Chief Economist of Econometrix, Dr. Azar Jammine, speaking to us there.